Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to join me for the video today. In it, I want to look at the wide receiver market. With all of the major wide receiver movement recently, I wanted to deep dive and examine the current NFL landscape. We've seen massive rises in wide receiver contracts this year and big time trades pulled off for stars at the position. So it got me thinking, is this the norm? Is this what we can expect moving forward? So my goal today is to answer the question, has the wide receiver market gone too far? But before we get into all of that, if you are a first-time visitor to the channel, welcome. If you just haven't gotten to it yet, or you've enjoyed content in the past, I invite you to give me a like and subscribe. The support means so very much to me, and it helps me out a ton. It enables me to do what I love so I can keep bringing you guys the content that you love. With that done, let's get into this version of Hot Off the Press. So the first thing that I wanted to do is look at the wide receiver trade landscape and see if these big trades are things that have happened in the past or this is brand new. So I wanted to look at some of the biggest trades for star wideouts over the last 20 years or so to compare where we've been and what we have seen to where we are now. We'll start in 2000 and Joey Galloway. Now, Dallas paid 2 first-round picks to acquire the disgruntled receiver from Seattle. Didn't quite work out for him. He tore his ACL in game 1, never caught a pass for Troy Aikman. Randy Moss, ex-Minnesota Viking, Hall of Famer, best wide receiver of all time, one of, my opinion. Vikings received a 7th overall pick for him, as well as linebacker Napoleon Harris. That was back in 2005. Fast forward 8 years, 2013, and it's Percy Harvin, who gets traded away from Minnesota to Seattle. The Vikings got 1st and 3rd round picks for him. Odell Beckham Jr., another star receiver, traded away. The Giants got 1st and 3rd round picks. And they also got Jabril Peppers, the safety, and that was in 2019. And then this year, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 monster trades for star wideouts, almost all of them. Marquise Brown, the worst out of the 4. The Cardinals gave up a 1st and a 3rd on draft night to acquire Hollywood. AJ Brown. The Eagles give up the number 18 pick as well as the 101, so 1st and 3rds. Once again, we are seeing a pattern here to get AJ Brown. The Raiders sent not only a 1st rounder, but also a 2nd rounder to Green Bay to get Devonte Adams. Honestly, it was a really good deal for Vegas. And then finally, the biggest one, Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs got a 1st, a 2nd, 2 4ths, one of those in 2023, and a 6th rounder as well for Tyreek Hill. Miami set the standard and bar really high for what the top end elite receivers might pull in trades moving forward. So what can we learn from this? Star wideouts, they have been involved in big deals for a very long time, and it certainly was shocking the rate at which it happened this year, but it is far from out of the ordinary. Now, the prices have stayed pretty much the same. We saw those 1st and 3rds be kind of the go-to for these star wideouts. I would argue with the Devonte Adams and Tyreek Hill situations, especially with Tyreek Hill, but that 2nd rounder and the upgrade instead of the 3rd, it is because Adams is the best wideout in the game and Tyreek Hill is not far behind him. Now, Miami definitely pushed the envelope on what is acceptable, at least for me, to make it happen and get that player there, but they were desperate to add a weapon to that offense opposite of Jalen Waddle. Now that we understand the trade market, let's look at the top 5 wide receiver salaries in 2022. Obviously, that starts with Tyreek Hill and the 4-year, $120 million deal he got right after being traded to Miami. That's $30 million a year. It is an astronomical amount. And that sticker shock, especially initially, when you're looking at what these other wide receivers has made, was pretty intense for me. Devonte Adams is on a 5-year, $140 million deal, so about $28 million a year for him. DeAndre Hopkins, a couple years ago, signed a 2-year extension that was for $54.5 million. And then A.J. Brown, when he got his deal after being traded to Philadelphia, $25 million a year over 4 years. And finally, Stephon Diggs with his 4-year deal for $96 million. The spike started back in 2020 with DeAndre Hopkins when he was moved to Arizona, and this number was topped twice in the span of a week with Devonte Adams and then Tyreek Hill. Hill became the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL with that $30 million a year number, and each of the top 10 highest paid wideouts is gonna make $20 million or more this season. When we compare this to the other driver of offense, of course, outside of quarterback, at the running back position, it shows us that Tyreek Hill makes nearly twice as much as Christian McCaffrey. And Allen Robinson, who was the 20th highest paid player at his position, is right behind Run CMC. He's gonna make $15.5 million per year. So the top 5 highest running back salaries start with Christian McCaffrey, 4 years, $64 million. That $16 million a year number is a little bit of an outlier. We take a step down to Alvin Kamara and Ezekiel Elliott. Both of those guys make $15 million a year. Zeke for 6 years, Kamara for 5. Dalvin Cook last year signed a big contract with my Vikings for 5 years and $63 million, which is about $12.5 million a year. And finally, King Henry in at number 5, $50 million over 4 years, 12.5 as well. So at first, these numbers really shocked me when you look at the disparity that these type of skill position players are making. But it's actually pretty clear why wide receivers do, and honestly should, make so much more than running backs. While most teams have strayed away from that bell cow running back system, much to the pain of fantasy owners everywhere, they still do employ a lead back with a second tailback that is usually more of a change of pace option. Now, there are still a handful of teams who split pretty close to 50-50 when we think about Denver last year with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, but the demand for running backs is far less than what we have at wide receiver in today's NFL, where 3 wide receiver and 4 wide receiver sets really become the norm, and even 5 wide receiver sets exist. In an increasingly pass-happy league, the need for receiving help has never been so great. When you see the success of teams like Cincinnati, who boast one of, if not probably the top trio of wide receivers in the entire league, it only really makes sense that teams would covet that position so much more. It is a copycat league in the NFL after all. It only makes sense then that as the demand for this position gets higher, the price to employ them is going to increase as well. Now, another reason for the increase in wide receiver pay, and really player pay in general, is the meteoric rise of the salary cap. While there was a dip in 2021 due to the pandemic, the nearly $26 million increase in 2022 is only the beginning. It is estimated that the salary cap could be all the way up to $225 million in 2023 as new TV money and sponsorships come in. And there is no reason to think that the cap increase is going to slow down anytime soon. So we know wide receiver salaries here. We understand what the salary cap is. Let's take a look at what percentage that actually becomes. Currently, Tyreek Hill makes about 14.5% of his team's total allotted salary. The top 10 wide receivers range from anywhere between 10% and 13%. This seems like a pretty extreme number when you consider that there are 52 other players that the team is still trying to pay. We aren't even taking the quarterback into consideration here after all. To take such a large slice of the pie, the impact of said player would have to be monumental. With that being said, let's take a look at how wide receiver production stacks up to the average yards that NFL teams put up every year. Now, full disclosure, these numbers are approximate. I am no mathematician. Ain't nobody got time for that. It is a pretty incredible ratio here and matches really closely with what we saw as far as wide receiver to running back pay differential. Not only are wide receivers producing about twice as many yards as running backs, but they also generate nearly twice as many scoring plays on average. And speaking of scoring plays and their importance, another factor that we have to take into account are big plays, which are far more likely to happen through the air than on the ground. These plays have an extreme impact on drive success. Scoring points is obviously the name of the game in the NFL, and a drive's scoring expectancy nearly quadruples from an explosive play. Having a top wide receiver on your roster, though, it is not just about stats. It has much more far-reaching impact on the rest of the team than that. It changes the way that the opponents have to defend and can completely shift a defensive strategy. Every level of the defense has to adjust with an elite wide receiver split out wide. It could be argued that outside of the quarterback position, of course, there's no position in football that is more important than wide receiver in today's NFL game. All of these contributing factors seem like a monumental impact to me when we consider the lack of supply, the market's demand, the production, and the overall impact that these players have. I'd say that the market for wideouts has not gone too far by any means. In fact, I believe that the gap in pay relative to other positions is only going to get wider for years to come. And with that, I will bid you farewell. I really hope you guys enjoyed the content today, and I hope you learned something. If it is your first time at the channel, I would love and greatly appreciate a like and subscribe. The support I get from all of you means so much to me, and it helps me out a ton. To all of my current subscribers out there, I cannot thank you enough for all of your support thus far. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and we'll see you next time.